into our goals, but has been a gift through a software developer that has seen Todd and Beth share along CSI practices and built this in light of that, and along with another ministry that serves in Africa. For the last 12 months, we've been working closer with him to implement this towards back-to-back practices. It's currently at a pilot phase where our caseworkers on the ground at one Mexico site are using it. And so just to walk through a little bit of where the feature set is at now, and maybe where development is heading. The idea, going through this, is that it would be multilingual. Currently, we've got a lot of auto translation working in there, so it automatically will translate from Google Translate, and within those field and strings are customizable, so they can be cleaned up in there. So if it's on an iPad, you can tap a button and it'll get your coordinates, and so it can save to a field. If you're in a remote area and just want to grab those coordinates, also then have some mapping of those coordinates. We use that either on like a sponsorship level, where's all of our sponsors, or our constituents, or where our children, or where of our sites. We've recognized this idea of cloud link to back-to-back Google Team Drive or shared drives. The idea there is recognizing that this database isn't for housing all data, right? Like there's going to be some big blobs of data that really reside in this database. It's not going to be built for everything, but if we can link it to internal network drives or cloud drives, so our field staff can move between organizational, repositories of data, we're accomplishing what we need to. Events and event scheduling, that's, it's kind of like a light project management area where there can be, worker can say, we need, or case manager can say there needs to be a meeting with this child on this date assigned to this caseworker, and that then populates into a calendar view. So we have events, and then that's a future look at events, but there's also a past look at events. So then you have a history of what events have happened, and those events can be tied to a child. They can be tied to a family. They can, and a caseworker, right, who performed that event or who informed that event. And then they can be different types of events. They can be medical events, they can be assessment events, birthday events, sure, yeah. So different views at event level. Data filtering. So all the data on a child, we want to be able to start filtering that down. So especially that work at country, site, program levels, those are our main categories. Sometimes the fourth level, sometimes it's community within a program. Let's see, we are hosting this on Amazon Web Services, on a Windows server there, and FileMaker Pro is our platform. Are you familiar with FileMaker?
I am not, but our tech folks are. Okay.
Yeah, so I've worked with that some. It's been a great platform in my view because of how easy it is for non-tech people to really get in and do some editing of the front end if needed. Cool. We had a lot. I've just done a little bit, but mostly our developers have done that. So it's one of the best, robust, while at the same time easiest for a novice to get in there and adjust the user interface. It also works offline and has offline sync ability. It can work either through just a web browser. There's a Mac and Windows client, and then iOS apps. The Windows or Mac or iOS can all work offline and then synchronize. That's just critical for us
Yeah.
in our location. Let's see. We're also, one of the development phases we're in right now is actually trying to synchronize it with our CRM ERP. We use NetSuite, and that's where a lot of our data has existed. And for us to do integration or synchronization, or at least parallel views, so we can at least visibly see if we got good matches of data, that we're working on now.
So one other example of that is all of our child sponsors are in our CRM system, our customer relationship management system. And so but they're all directly connected to a specific child in our program. Or, there's probably other things too that sync over, but we're just trying not to have to use two systems to enter data into both. If we enter it in one, there's an ability for it to sync up with the other. So we're working.
And that can look like, the child records themselves, the sponsor records themselves. It can be sponsor communication. It can be sponsor communication with the child communication with the sponsor, or just notes on the sponsor. The interface, the idea was that there would be an admin, an executive, and a field interface that's a different view into the same data set. The admin, someone that's more focused on sponsor management. The executive, someone that's more focused on the top level of reporting, analytics, being able to see KPIs all right there. And the field, that it's the caseworker. And the caseworker, jumping down to the bottom there in security, that our field set is limited to the scope of their responsibility. So if they only serve in a single house or community, that is the scope of the data that they have permission to access, even if they are all or a partner staff for children that are in our system.
We were really concerned initially about child safety, and if a staff member left and they took their laptop with them and their file was open, obviously those are extreme cases, but could happen. So we've tried to build in as many security layers as possible, even syncing and when those can sync up, if the staff member has permissions or not. So it's been one of our top priorities, the whole process.
Yeah, very cool.
And that's ongoing. And in my view, that's something that has to be always ongoing. Currently, there's multiple levels where the data itself is encrypted. There's some two-factor authentication when you log in. And that's something that another more robust, even two-factor method we're moving towards. I was able to synchronize that so you can log in with a Google login so that staff can reuse their login that they use for business. But that breaks down when you want to log in offline, and then you end up with two logins anyway. So we're probably not going to stay with that. Probably just end up needing to still distribute unique credentials. And then the actual data, there's information on the country, the site, the program. How's that? Is this view of the text there minuscule for you, or is that visible?
Yeah, it looks great.
Okay. So then child is really one of the key areas. Contacts, that's another person or entity. That's someone we identify not under our care, but a significant person in the care structure. And so that could be an adult, maybe it's a child that for one reason or another is not under our care, but is in a family structure or an influence. And then families exist as a record, but really it's where you can then piece together all the children, the contacts, and the staff members, and build a family system, and then start notes based on that family system. CSI then is rounds or multiple assessment levels on the child record, events at the child record, interviews, photos, documents, school scores and tests, medical. Added in here surveys as well. The interviews feature just wasn't robust enough. And so what we have is actually a customizable, it's almost a Google form builder where you can make custom forms, put your own kind of drop downs or multiple select options in there and create your own forms and then assign that to a country or a site or a program or a house. And so then those forms are reusable for caseworkers on the ground.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I'll keep moving through here. I think let's see, one moment. Okay, so this is just some extra views in here of what the home office would look like for the views. Let me jump this a little more, the directors and field team. So you can just see little thumbnails there of what that may look like.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is actually the schema, the different tables, primarily showing that the child record here is one of the key areas that all the other tables relate to. Let's see. Moving on to the next. Families. Families is something that was not built into the system as much before back-to-back has come into this. So that's an area that we've really emphasized because we're moving more into family assessments being something that occurs at every site and in the communities where it's relevant. So this is a overview, a little bit of what the connectivity can look like. So someone can be internet connected on a browser, on a PC or Mac or on an iPad or iPhone. That kind of connectivity looks like into the hosted server on the bottom there, and then through a utility called MirrorSync, link with devices that serve offline, and then manually we'll sync that data back to the. Let's see. Yeah, just again, of our repositories of data exist in these three systems for back-to-back.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is where, again, we've just wanted to make sure that security is being considered at every level, at the permission level, restricting the scope of data and tables being accessed as well. And I think beyond this, I can show you what the system itself looks like on a test record. So these are, all of the children in the system, and I can filter it by who's in the USA and Cincinnati. I thought I just created one here. So I'll create a new record here, and then this essentially is the main view table for what a caseworker would see. Type of fields that they would have. And as they fill this in, there's different orphan types that can be filled in there, what kind of custody they have, and children can be grouped into groups just for filtering purposes or for assessment or reporting purposes. A lot of different data then can be put in here. Surveys is what I mentioned as well. So you can add a survey against the record of this child, and that's reportable. So it can be added to reports where that data set is compared to other data sets. This is where a cloud path, another online folder, can be linked to that child record. They can a family. So once you've created a family, that's where the child record, and it can be related people, related children, who are primary caregivers there. I think we've moved away from even saying mother and father, just and talked about primary and secondary caregivers, just to create flexibility with that in most circumstances. And then holistic. So I think I'll ask if there's any questions before I dive into what it looks like for CSI here. How's it look so far?
Yeah, it looks great. I mean, it seems like you've built a pretty massive system that works with everything else, right? Your Google Drive, your CRM, your sponsors, and all that jazz. It must have taken quite a lot of time to build.
Well, we've been fortunate to have somebody build it for us. So we just have given them the feedback, or Nate, who's built it for us, the feedback on what we think we need in it, and then what we want to be able to see as a result of our data input. So like this, for example, is the CSI. Obviously, all the database part, you talked about the relevance and importance of that. That was critical to us, but we wanted to be able to link them to families,
Sure.
caregivers, or different interactions. So we wanted to be able to see that. So that part's, obviously huge on input and from our field or from what we transfer over from our existing systems. And then this if you look at the upper right corner, the general was the database. The holistic is this, where we begin to develop the CSI and then build a plan. So you can kind of see basically the steps to create an individual. So here's, for example, food. We actually create, you can click on the different assessments. You can write in observations, what are your goals and next steps. That's where we call a plan for each child. So, and then Jared can put data in, and we can see this on a consolidated view too.
Right. So there's basic, selection through the domains here. And what we're doing is creating round one of the CSI assessment.
And what we've done is train our team on how to do the CSI and get to the point where they're doing it in the data entry part. It's not all subjective. I mean, it is somewhat subjective anyway, but at least we have a good baseline of training before somebody's introduced onto the system.
Right.
And then you can see then each individual, like food, shelter, what's that, protection? What's protection, health? Those all have a separate, unique score. They do not sum. That's really important, because obviously if somebody's a 1 in food, then it doesn't really matter what it sums out to be. They're still in food itself. So then we can do that score as often as we want. So we would probably do it on a quarterly basis, and we can set that up to be a reminder, and then we can set up observations and next steps and action plans down there, where we can write those in. And so a caseworker or a caregiver or a supervisor of a child or a direct caregiver can actually look there and say, okay, what are my next steps and goals for this child in the next 90 days?
Yeah, very cool.
The CSI is like the X-ray, and then the goals and next steps are like the plan in light of that X-ray, so to speak, like the treatment. So it was important to us that composite tab was there. If you click on the composite.
Yeah.
So that in one place you can see like what are the goals and next steps for each of the areas. So we added
What I haven't done, constructing this quickly, is put in the needs of observation, the goals, and the next steps. When those are created, then you'll also get a summary of a next step action plan that is automatically generated in this bottom left corner. But you can see there's trend lines that start being created there, and some history visibly to be able to look at that. General area is static. I believe, actually, is that... No, that does change based on the round then as well.
Okay.
Our hope out of this section is we get the baseline assessment, we have next steps and a plausible plan for each child, and then we can also look back to go, was there change, hopefully in a positive way, in each of the domains.
Right. Very cool. So when let's say the person charged with doing this assessment, let's say a social worker, logs in and they want to view not just Jane Doe, but I don't know, let's say 15 kids that they're responsible for assessing.
Yes.
How does that work? How does all that info kind of flow up to the social worker's dashboard?
Sure. Let me see if I can do some simulation of that.
So you can see a one-page view of each child and their most recent CSI with those colored dots. So we color them we have a language we use here back to back with color, so we color them in those languages, but they could be any color essentially. But it'll show you the child's name, and then it'll show you their most recent score in each domain.
Cool. Very cool. So we, in the version of the CSI that we created for Haiti, we also color-coded the quantitative part of the CSI, and anything that was a 1 or a 2 rolled up to sort of an emergency dashboard or an escalated thing. And the color coding is super helpful. In a long list of all of the assessments, to be able to just pinpoint the areas that are red and know exactly where you need to put your effort is helpful. So yeah, I love that you guys have that. That's really great.
There's, I think, Trace Reyes. So this is a view of what it looks like to look all across a community and at the CSI records of everyone in that community. That's been important for us to be able to then track what are some summary streams for essentially creating goals at the community program level.
So like on our colors, our red is our liability. So we look at red as the most urgent and important. So we can quickly look across and go, okay, Len or Daphne, she has a 1 under shelter. So we're going to look at that one as a high risk, or a child that we need to dive deep into that story quickly. Really, red or blue are the 1s and 2s, and then 3s and 4s are the orange and green. We use a situational leadership process, and it aligns with that here back to back. But I think it could probably be any color, but it's been really helpful to be able to see it that way.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is then another view is based on, the filtering of a program. You can then look at what assessments have happened across there, see a little more information, and then click into a record and dive into the record right there as well.
So you can see this one obviously already has data put in. It's had the goals and the next steps.
Yeah. One that would have
It just had it should be on the composite, right?
let's see, I'm not sure if this one does.
Maybe not.
Maybe one of the Trace Reyes kids.
I don't know if this is helpful or what you're thinking, but this is, I don't know if it's more show. We're just getting to the point of after our pilot here in our Cancun site, it's trying to cascade this to most of our other places we serve. It's taking quite a bit of resourcing, so it's got to be hosted, and then we've had quite a bit of developmental cost that we've worked with another developer in addition to the guy who did the original product for us. He's still involved, but there's some other outsourcing that we've done. So like we're looking at, 2020, we'll spend another 25 grand continuing to manage the system.
Sure. Sure. How long have you guys been using this system?
Really only last quarter. Yeah, since April.
Okay.
But we're hoping to launch it out to all our sites here through the beginning of 2020.
Gotcha. Very cool. And so, what's the response been like from your field staff, both your Americans in the field and then your nationals?
I'd say in Cancun, where we've piloted it, it's only nationals. We don't have Americans participating on that staff team that are using it. So it's really well received by our Cancun team. I'd say the actual American use of it has been pretty limited thus far.
I just activated a social worker in Cincinnati
Oh, that's true.
yesterday. That we have a social worker team in Cincinnati that's going to begin their pilot on it the next few months.
Yeah, I think we're least concerned about our U.S. staff because they're fairly comfortable with technology. Some of our faraway places we were most concerned about. So that was one of the reasons we wanted it to be able to be offline, be used offline, and then have a syncing process. Like our Nigeria site, they have only internet in one place. So they'll go back to their head office, and sync up once they're back from the field, wherever they are. So, but for the most part, I think that the Cancun staff in particular, it's been well received. We did take the time to Jared flew down there. He went down, who'd you go with? Yeah, Nate, so our key developer, and spent 2 or 3 days doing some training and orientation so they could practice it. So that part's not necessarily easy because it takes time and resources to get people places, but it was definitely worth the effort.
Yeah, very cool. Well, that's great. So far, what if anything do you wish that you knew before you kind of unleash this thing?
How much it would have cost? Because we spent a lot of money in additional development, just because you kind of think, oh, well, we can see this, but then, oh, what about that? And then those are all, additional costs. So I don't know. But essentially, I think if we would have had somebody do this, it would have been $100,000 to $150,000 or more. We've added to that free product that we were given another 40 last year-ish, maybe more. We believe that it's worth it though, because of everything you already talked about. We get the current, we've got a baseline, we have a specific plan for each child, and we can gather data. We think some of the data will be beneficial for grants and foundations to apply for some of those. So there's some secondary benefits for us.
I think just to put another layer from a tech perspective on the cost of development, what I've seen what's been tricky is knowing how to best hand this off to a development team when it's already a complex project. We have a great volunteer developer who, he invests blood, sweat, and tears. He is just all in, but it's not his full-time job. And yet, he's the most efficient person because he knows this product which he crafted and is complex. And so we want this to be able to be sustainable, and that means we need to have this where multiple developer hands have access to it. And I think that's what I wish we would have planned a little more is how can we create developer accessibility into this project that already is built up so large.
Yeah, sure. Well, very cool. How did you go about with the design? So, the CSI kind of exists, and that's one piece that has informed your process and your system. What are other things that informed how you think through, the child profile piece, the family profile piece, how they communicate together? Did you just start with a blank canvas? Was there some, something else you were using previously that informed this? How'd you get there?
I'd say working backwards from the actual next steps and the goals. Just one of the things we were already trying to do, I think we were 100% successful, is we had a goal to have an individual plan for each child we serve. So what we call it a 5-point child development plan: spiritual, physical, educational, emotional, and social development. What does it look like in that holistic process? So we knew that was our starting point, or at least our end point. And then working backwards, what data and information did we want to make sure we had to be sure that we could actually see that on the end, in the end product? So, we knew other names. We actually, in the beginning, did not have the family connections, but we're starting to do more, unification or working in communities with families. And so we knew we needed that family element. Our Cancun site in particular only does family preservation. So I think that us. We did decide against putting medical data in right now. We have a community center in our Mazatlan site that's pretty sophisticated. We decided to keep all the electronic medical records off of this program. It might be a link at some point or something, but it was just too much. So we kind of voiced stuff out and then kept adding stuff into what we thought, hey, this would be really beneficial for us to have for each child. It's still not perfect, but man, we have more Cancun, more current information on a child and their specific identity and what we believe to be their baseline assessment. I mean, that alone is gold. And to have that at your house and your file cabinet is way even better,
Sure.
That's been a good motivator. The other thing is we have staff that, we have staff attrition sometimes. And so we know that we don't want that case file, not in the sense of security, but all that information is in that caseworker's head. We wanted to get as much down on paper or electronically as we could so that it was easily transitioned from one caseworker to the next. So we started asking, okay, what do we need to have in here? What do we want them to be reporting on? It still has an element of human, self-control and process that we got to make sure we train them on how to use it well and put the right data in. Because at the end of the day, most of the fields are subjective, but still better than not having anything at all.
Yeah, absolutely. So on your family profiles and your family assessments, how do you approach those? Do you use the same CSI tool to assess families?
Everybody's still an individual assessment, right? The child is individually assessed in that.
There's some family assessment fields.
Oh, there are?
Yeah.
See, this is why Samantha's here. She knows what she knows.
Who has that saved in the shelter?
So most of the kids in our community center are attached to a family. So we want to make sure we had all the other family members. It gave us the ability to put kids as family connections that are not necessarily in our programming, in addition to the ones that would be. So if there's a brother and sister that are in it, they're in here and they're both individually assessed.
Right.
And then we do a family assessment.
No, we don't
Are you
anymore.
looking?
Yeah.
We used to have that. We took it out.
Oh, we took that out.
Yeah, because we said it wasn't our practice.
So it's individual to each child, and then their family relationships would be in there. So we did not do a whole family assessment based on the CSI. I think it's not supposed to be. I thought it was the original intent of the CSI was individual per child.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is.
but you can look at all the child CSI assessments on there. And in the family panels, there are places for you to document what their income is, what their jobs are. You can put notes about some of the conditions of their home, where it's located, like things like that, record by the family. But as far as like a CSI evaluation on the family as a whole, that's not something that we're doing right now.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, you've got an amazing system. It's really great. We've been on this journey for about a year and a half, just trying to evaluate and look at what else is out there. And, there's not much, unfortunately. And so we, ran into a few sort of case management and database, program softwares that included a child status index evaluation. And I love what you guys have done. What's your plan from here? Are you planning to, is there a plan, I should say, to license it to other organizations or local practitioners, or what's your goal?
Yeah, so Jared may interrupt me. So we just had a meeting today with the guy who developed it, just a brief one to discuss that. So big picture, yes, we want to share it. We want to get it to as many people that work in our field as possible. I think the next step is for us to strip it down. It's kind of an open source, so you can use it. You guys could take it, use it in your area. You can build on it and develop it. What we haven't mastered yet is how we're going to do that. And we haven't mastered one thing that's challenging is like say we can sure you guys can use it. Here's the blank template, the blank page. You guys can take it. You're going to need to know that you're going to invest X amount of dollars in development because you're going to get the chalkboard version of it. You could take what we have, but you're going to have different processes and different systems. Am I right? So our hope is we can get the margin and have the capacity to be able to separate it out, create this page template that you guys or other organizations can have and use, license it out. I don't know what that our biggest concern is. Can an organization take it and actually afford to do it? Because you have to still host it on a web server, Amazon Web Services or another one. You have to keep up with it on a development sense, even troubleshooting. We don't want to be the troubleshooting questionnaires, people. So this kind of thing. So we're still trying to jump those hoops. I think we're going to get there in 2020, but we're that's where we are on, right? Anything you'd add to that?
It is, yeah. I think, my vision, my hope and vision for this, Jay, is that there would be other like-minded organizations, like, the way that we're talking now, where there's, just similar assessments and bullseyes and effect we want to have on families and children, and that there would be development teams, even cross-ministry development teams that could contribute to this, and I would want to, I'm wanting to put this up in a way where it can be structured and hosted so that it's easy for others to contribute and for everyone to win. And I think we're a few steps away from that. Right now, we're not working with an empty data set. For example, when we're doing development, we're having to work with our data set and use that and then do a release. We want to start working with an empty trunk as we're doing development and then release it. We've built a utility so data from a previous version can be imported into the new version. And so I think we're working on some good release cycle features on there so that could be reproducible for other ministries. But yeah, my heart is that this would be something that is beneficial and easy for us to enter into, and then for it's collaborative at the development level.
Sure. Well, that sounds great. So another part of our ministry is Care Portal. I don't know if you guys know much about Care Portal, but it's a technology platform that we created to help connect churches with kids and families in crisis through the child welfare system. And we are beginning to build out a development team to manage and maintain that software. And so our hope is that whatever we end up utilizing in this space for our international child database, CSI, and so forth, would be able to, communicate seamlessly with Care Portal to create really so Care Portal is a connecting platform. It really supports the ministry. So as we do these various, initiatives around the world, Care Portal exists almost as like a safety net, so that as emergency needs are generated out of the various stuff that we do, Care Portal is there to communicate those needs to a community. Now that community is defined by whatever we want to define it by. So it could be an intra-country, Mexico-based community. So, the partners that we have in Mexico can communicate together through the system to come up with local needs. And if need be, they can escalate it to a broader community, which could be the global church or a subset of donors in the United States or whoever. And so, we're thinking about, how can we really, so we got various systems, and like everybody does, various systems and CRMs and whatnot that manage what we do. Which pieces can we use from technology that's out there and get it to communicate well together? All that to say, if it's okay with you guys, I would love to make an introduction between some of our developers and IT folks and just continue the conversation. What is the potential of this system for Go project and vice versa? Does Care Portal potentially play a role for back-to-back? I don't know. At this point, the conversation's moving beyond my sphere of knowledge and influence. So anyway, if that's okay with you guys, I'd love to continue the conversation and get some more knowledgeable development folks around the table.
I think that'd be great.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, and we're just honest, in all transparency, our lack of ability to go, we just want to share it is really about capacity. We don't have the man or woman power to take it to that level. We're kind of somewhat dependent on our developers. So we've kind of put our head down and internally to say, okay, what do we get for our team, cost there? And then if we have the margin and time, it was really a people time thing. It's really not even a financial as much, although it does help, but that's our issue. So we're definitely open to more conversation about it and see what maybe we can collaborate on it. Cause I think we believe this, especially what we invested with our own team, has potential for really great infrastructure to support what we do. And it's pretty universal.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think, just a simple assessment tool and online database that's multilingual and usable offline could radically change the face of child welfare around the world. It doesn't take a massive system, just a few best practices in a simple to use format. I genuinely think would create better outcomes for potentially tens of thousands of kids around the world. And, praise the Lord for technology, right? Like it legitimately gives us the ability to do that and have these kinds of crazy conversations. So.
Okay. Well, should we look for you to follow up to see when that meeting might be, or when we can try to do that, and you can throw some times at us and some dates, or that'd be great.
That would be great. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll loop in some of our guys, and whatever works with our collective schedules, we'll figure it out. That would be awesome.
Awesome. Okay. Awesome, man.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time and the demo. You guys are doing some amazing work. My respect for back-to-back just continues to, level up every time I interact with you guys. So really appreciative.
Well, thanks, man. We appreciate it a lot. Okay. Have a good day.
All right. You too.
Thanks.
All right, God bless.